Here's a Cuckoo clock in for repair, but a lot of it is just cosmetic. So we'll be going over this whole thing. This one actually runs. It cuckoos to some degree. I think one of the bellows doesn't want to work real well, so got to do some cosmetic stuff to it. There's a crack in the dial. We should probably fix that. Look at doing something with one of those numbers. A hinge left lost from the door. And here it is in the back. Okay. May make a little brass plate for the back of that. Just generally go over the whole thing. Okay, there's one nut missing from the hands, the end nut. That'll have to come off. Let's take the bird out of here. Bend the wire up on the door. Releases him. Okay, we'll make a new pin for that one. Yeah, as far as these go, not much. There should be a nail in here. That nail is missing. You know, keeps it from sliding. Okay. Kind of an odd looking wire. I don't think that's original. That's not an original wire. Let's see if I'm doing that. Yeah, the wires to the bellows aren't original replacement bellows. See about trying to make them look a little more like the originals. Nail is missing from this side as well. Oh, that's definitely not an original bellows wire. And that's certainly not original. See, the whole bellow top's been replaced. These are marked West Germany, which would mean they'd have to be after 1949. So these have been replaced at some time. Yeah, these are just straight commercial bellow top replacements. Maybe what we'll do is we'll take all of this off of here. Oh yeah, see, somebody's put a piece of tape on the back here. That's going to keep it from working right. It's not the way you repair them. What we'll do is we'll take this material off of here, and we'll replace it with what originally goes on them. We'll put leather on them. That's and as you would find on normal Cuckoo for this particular clock, that's the wrong end. Wrong end for those. Now that is like a normal end. This should be the end that the weight hangs from. Oh, that looks like it could be a loop end. You know, I've got some original old ones. Here's what the things are supposed to look like. I happen to have two of these, so I'll put these on. These are from a junker clock. This is what it's supposed to look like. This is obviously a ring that's been opened up. But we will try to put this back to as original as possible. Yeah, I don't know. I'm using some kind of goofy clips here. These are certainly not original. That didn't originally go with these clocks. chains out. Okay, there we go. Chains are out. Okay, 4 screws. Okay, there we are. And we will set the... Okay. Close-up glasses. Got a pivot that's worn here. See that end of that pivot flopping back and forth. That's a worn hole, so we need to rebush that hole. It'll eventually cause a problem. Yeah, the one above it too on the escape gear. Somebody really put a lot of oil in that, but you see the one on the escape gear too. See if I can get that under there. Where is it? See it flopping around in there? So that needs, that definitely needs replaced. Okay, so we got at least 2 pivots there. What about these here? One might not be too bad. Let's check out the strike side. There's one there that probably should be rebushed. Looking on the front, the run side. Oh yeah, bad one there. Definitely bad there. You can see this just watch that bushing. See it flopping around? This one right here. That's got to be rebushed. That'll eventually stop the clock. Yeah, okay. Now what we need to do is we need to make sure that it looks like there's going to be 4 or 5, maybe half a dozen bushings that will need to be done on it. And that's okay. If you're going to have this thing run for another 100 years, why, best thing to do is make sure that those bushings are done upright. So we're going to take this guy apart, get the bird off the perch. Okay, that seems to be in good order. And here's another one. It's bushed real bad behind this little tiny gear that moves the count wheel. Now if I can get it show up there. See that little bit of gear? Look how much it moves. That shouldn't move that much. So we'll have to rebush it as well. That's when I'll have to turn on the lathe. Alright. For those of you who are looking at this to learn about these old cast movements like this, we've been over them in some other videos, but see this lever here is the one that pushes the bird out, and that's connected to a little brass lever that has another wire that sticks out here onto the count wheel. And those two work together in conjunction with that brass lever that runs on a brass cam, And these slots are the count wheel. And so we need to take that apart. What you should do if you want to repair one of these things, you're going to want to make sure we know that that rotates that way. And so the chain is going to be pulling down this way, and so we want to make sure that's at the point where it locks there. Okay, now it's in lock. If I hit this again, see, you can make it run. Now it should strike twice. Half hour, 3 times. Okay, and what you want to do is you want to look when it's in the lock position. You're studying these things to know how to take them apart and put them back together. You need to make sure you look and see where there are pins. And right now, okay, got this reset up here now. When this is in the rest position, now you see that pin on that wheel in there? What I mean is this one right here, right there. See that pin? See how it's hitting up against the edge of that brass? That's what stops the strike. Now that end is on a piece of brass here that rides on a cam that has a notch in it that can drop down into. Well, what keeps that from dropping down into there is this end of the lever that's on the count wheel. When this is up on the edge of the count wheel, it keeps that brass thing from dropping down to catch that pin. Once this lever here drops into a slot on a count wheel, that brass lever can drop down, and when it drops down, that little pin hits it, and that stops the whole strike. And you'll see what happens if I initiate the strike. I push on a lever over here. That raises, that pin drops down onto another lever, and then when I let go, let's initiate that sequence again. There you see that pin there hitting that lever, and as the thing moves toward strike time, releases that pin, and that can rotate until that finishes striking. When that drops down into that slot, then the brass lever can fall in front of that pin and stop it again. So if you want to see the sequence, we can also go just barely. Hard to get this to do. Oh, missed it. Anyway, there's a warning pin in there that it has to drop on, and warning lever, and then it releases and strikes. But most of the modern Cuckoos, when you want to put these back together, that pin should be near facing the top of the movement. And this one, it's going to be down around 5 o'clock when you put this back together. When this is in a slot, that pin should be at 5 o'clock. So we're going to end up taking this apart now. Okay, so time to take this apart. And first thing I want to do, I'm going to take that count wheel off. Right out. Okay, why don't we get these off here too? Now before we take this apart any further, we need to get that little gear off of there. I'll zoom into that. This little gear has to come out, and it's held onto the pin. So we'll knock that pin out of there. Put a new one in. And we'll take that out. Okay, we got a pin here. This wasn't put together very well. Now we can take that off. Take that off. Tension washer. Cannon pinion. And those look okay. I'm going to take the anchor out. The anchor, let me check it for wear. And not really badly worn. A little bit of a groove in it, but not that much. Okay. Wire spring. And we're going to take off the Cuckoo perch. Brass spring wire that's wanting to hang up. Okay, there we go. For those of you who are interested, note 2 that this brass lever, the spring for it, is on the back side. Okay. Now the thing to do is get these nuts loosened. The drivers out. Man, some of these are really tight. Okay. Okay, now examine these individual pieces. I'll make sure it'll look like it. All these lantern pinions. And we'll make sure that they're not worn. Okay. That one looks good. Looking, seeing tips of the gears are not, gear teeth are not too badly worn. A little wear, maybe we'll take these apart and clean up those teeth in there. Some kind of wear in there. We could file those square again. Should maybe do that so that we don't end up with that click slipping off of a tooth, and not likely to happen, but we could look at cleaning those up a little bit. Gunky dirt. Gunky dirt. Strike pins don't appear to be too badly worn. No. Pinion's not worn. It's generally kind of dirty. So we'll clean everything, polish pivots, and then we'll put things back together and start checking for. Okay. Pivots appear to be in fairly good shape. Okay, everything's in pretty good order. And the brass. That's all important brass lever. I don't see anything on it that shows any significant wear. Okay, I found a potential problem taking this is on the Cuckoo side, taking this apart, looking at the click and the ratchet. The ratchet, what I did was I went around all the teeth and I dressed that up by using a very fine file to remove the burrs off of it. And then clean the rust out of here, like this. Let me see if I can get in a little closer. You can see what we did with it. Got the rust pretty well cleaned out of there. But in cleaning this up, I'm looking at this, go around here, and look what I found. Like in one of the other Cuckoo clocks that I did a video, there's a porosity here. It's a defect in the casting. And when I'm looking at this, what bothers me about it is that when we look at this tooth right here particularly, and we go around and we look at the other side, you can see that porosity goes all the way through right here. And that has a potential for those teeth getting busted off and creating a real problem. So what I'm going to do after I clean this all up is I'm going to take some epoxy and I'm going to fill both of these with epoxy. It's like filling a tooth with a cavity in it. Because that could potentially in the future, especially if somebody jerks on the chain right as the click is on that happens to be on that tooth, I could probably snap that tooth right out of there. So I'm going to fill that with some epoxy and at least give it some backing. What I really should do, I suppose, is completely take this apart. It would involve a lot of machining a new thing out of here, she can take it completely out of there and maybe silver solder that. But I think just filling it with epoxy will be enough. Okay, I filled those with epoxy and cleaned them up. At least the holes are filled. Gives a little support inside. I don't know. So if there's any pressure put to it, at least there's some support inside. I managed to get a little bit on the other side too. So hopefully that strengthens it enough now that there won't be a problem. It's amazing how many defects there really are in these old castings. But there it is. About as best I can do, but without taking it apart and silver soldering, but filled those voids. That should help. Okay, now do to clean these is before I put them in the ultrasonic, get all the gunk out of them. I have a mild abrasive. It's actually made for acrylic bathtubs and showers. It's a very mild abrasive and it cuts all the garbage off of it. Takes some of the tarnish off without making it excessively shiny. Just use a brush, work it into the lantern pinions. Get all the gunk out of there. Good brushing. Get down in every nook and cranny and crevice. And gently do between all the teeth, all the gears. Okay. Some steel wool on these brass shrouds. Get the garbage off of them. This is impregnated with some of the polish as well. Get into every bit of this. Okay. Use a polishing cloth, wipe it off. Now this is going to go into the ultrasonics as well. That'll get all the any grit that's left from the compound off of it. I'd say that looks a lot better. That's looking better. All wheels are cleaned that way. And that gets them in good shape. So there they are. That all hand cleaned. Same with the plates. And now we'll put them in ultrasonic and clean them. Okay, and taking the time side main wheel apart and looking at the click in it. It's the problem with it is pretty loose. I'm going to tighten it up, because that has potential for slipping off of the teeth. So we'll tighten that up. And this is with all other arbors. Polish these pivots. The teeth on this ratchet wheel are, you got burrs on them, worn burrs on them. So I'm taking a small file and I'm individually going to dress those, and then use a triangular shape file to cut the notch just a tad deeper. So we're dressing all of the wheels, all of the teeth on these wheels. Okay, now with everything cleaned, I put the two trains back in. The motion works isn't in, but that all goes on the front. But all of the timed gears are in. There's only 3 of them. And the strike gears, there's 4 of those with the fan. With it all cleaned now, we can now see a little better just what needs to be done here. We look at this time side, and I move that main wheel. A little bit of play in it. I might replace that one. Look at the second wheel. You see that that pivot moving back and forth. Move that light over there. That needs to be replaced. That's worn quite a bit. And then the escape gear, that pivot needs replaced. So we really have 2 or 3 on that side. And when we look at this, this is where the little gear attaches that will run the count wheel. Look at that wobble. That needs to be bushed. Looking at the second wheel, definitely needs bushed. See how much play is in that. That shouldn't move like that. Third wheel. Third wheel looks okay. And the fan or fly, definitely. Escape, yeah. Yeah, I think so. Oh well. definitely. Third wheel. Yeah, probably. And fly, no. So we'll probably have 10, 11 bushings in this movement. It'll be done on. What you got to do is you figure out which way does this actually run. Okay. Chain winds this way, so the weight is going to be pulling this way. So when we look to see which side is the worn side of the hole, we put pressure on that main wheel, and we look and see where the pivots move. So you know the left side of that hole, for example, is the unworn side, and up to the left looks like somebody put a little dimple in there, marking that sometime before. Huh. But I don't see a bushing that was replaced. So anyway, that's what we got to do. So we'll go about the business of rebushing this movement then. And by bushing it, it should last for many, 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 many years to come. Okay, the other way we look at this too is we put the gear in here. And this really shouldn't deviate that much. It only should deviate about 4 or 5 degrees. And that's much more than that. So that's the first one we'll replace. So we'll start out by measuring what we got here. These have all been polished already. So we're just going to go. So, and that looks like 1.1. 1.1 millimeters. So we're going to drill this hole out, or ream it out, and put a bushing in here that's slightly less than 1.1. So I know I have a 1.1 bore. I've got some that are 1 millimeter bore. This is the bushing that has a 1 millimeter bore, and then the outside diameter of the bushing is 3 millimeters. So I have a cutter that's 2.97, and we'll cut that hole out to 2.97. Press in one of these, and then we will use a broach to broach it out to 1.1 to exactly fit, and then that will be the repair. Okay, with the new bushing put in, now you see that's the kind of deflection we get. And I'll smooth broach that out, and that one's done. Okay, we have the strike side all rebushed. Nothing loose now. And running nice and smooth and quiet. And then we'll do the run side. We'll be done with the bushing. Okay, bushings are done on the run side. And runs real nice now. Where that second wheel was worn, you don't see it flopping around now. And on the back, same thing. Don't see any flopping around. Oh, clean it all up, and we'll put it back together. Okay, here's all the parts, all cleaned, polished, and movement ready to go back together. Okay, I'll have to clean all the pivot holes with a toothpick. Okay. That's going okay. Okay, that's there. Okay. Put this hook back up here. Okay, so you can see how this is supposed to be set and how it functions. I'm going to lift the lever on the front. That would normally be lifted by the minute hand. You see where the pin on that wheel is impinging on that brass lever. As I lift the lever on the front, you can see it lifts a lever inside there next to that wheel. It's going to push against the brass wheel, while at the same time that lever moves in front of the pin. Right, that drops into that position. That's called the warning position. And now when the minute hand on the front finally turns far enough to drop off that lift lever, then that lever inside here is going to drop and release that pin, and the strike will run. Until it's done striking, then the brass lever falls in front of that pin again. So when this is set up, you have to make sure that that pin there is close to that brass lever when you put this together. Okay, that's going to be close to the brass lever, as well as the brass lever being in the notch on that cam. And here's the whole cycle again. Warning, strike. And it'll strike until the brass lever falls on that notch in the cam, and then it shuts off. So lift, warning, strike. Lift, warning, strike. That's how it works. As far as oiling, use good clock oil, and I find the easiest thing to use is a real fine paintbrush. That way I can control exactly how much gets in there. Brush clean with a cover. I'll finish putting the rest of this stuff on. We've got tension washer, intermediate wheel, we've got the hour pipe, and we've got the, the minute pipe, and the hour pipe. The intermediate wheel is what goes between the two of those. And we've got a washer that goes on here, and we've got to put a pin in there, so I've got to get a new pin. Yeah, let's see. Probably, let's try this. Okay. Okay, is it tensioned? Yep, okay. And then we're going to take a cutter, cut those off. Okay, so that's set back up. Perch back on. And there's the cleaned and rebushed and everything, movement, everything back on the front. All set. Nice new bushings on it. Should run for many years to come. Okay. Poor bird that goes in that clock is it works nice. I straightened out the wires on it, but he's kind of beat up paint wise. So what I did was got online and I found what he's supposed to look like. So I'm going to use some acrylics and I'm going to bring him back to life a little bit. Okay, there's the bird. And there's his cousin back there. Okay, it looks a little better. This dial has been glued on to where it can't be removed. That number completely crumbled. So I'm filling the crack, and then we'll do touch-ups with acrylics to make them look good. But you can see these are just completely rotten. They're no good. They're old celluloid, they're not bone. So, you know, it's an early form of plastic. And we're just going to replace the numbers. That'll allow us to repair the crack. And make this dial look real good. So, Okay, numbers have been removed and cleaned up. Crack has been fixed, and I've got the new numbers now. And the numbers that I got were white, but I antiqued them, so they should look pretty good when we get these on there. Let's see how that looks against that. Yeah, I think it's going to be absolutely perfect. We'll do the same with the hands. Just laid the numbers and hands on there. That's what the color looks like now. That's not stark white. They almost look like they're made out of bone now. Okay, the inside of the case can dry out, make a lot of little wood flakes and dust that can get into the movement. And it also takes on kind of a musty smell after all these years. So what I like to do is coat the inside with boiled linseed oil. It seals it, it keeps the wood from dusting, and gets rid of the musty smell. Okay, we're beginning to look at the bellows. The tops on these have been replaced, and one of the ways you can tell it hasn't been that long ago. It has to be after 1950, because the bellows are stamped. On the bottom says West Germany, and so these are actually not turned 90 degrees from what they ought to be. And then to compensate for that, they made up some really goofy lift wires. They should be straight lift wires. So I'm going to take these bellow tops off. I'm going to redo the material on them. This is just that paper, or probably Tyvek. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace them with the original leather that would have been found on these. And then we'll re-glue these in the proper position. We'll make straight bellow lifts as they would have been originally. This paper, by the way, on this is probably original, as I saw another clock with exactly the same paper on it. Okay. Yeah, that's Tyvek. Kind of messy. Get this old stuff off. Almost looks like spider webs. Okay, this is a piece of leather. I've used a template now that for the things, laid it on the leather and traced around it. I'm going to take a piece of scissors and I'm going to cut that out, and that's going to be the fabric then that goes onto the bellows. I just got to do this so I leave the line. Leather bellows make a different sound than the paper ones. Set that aside. Alright, there's the front edges have been glued now. We're going to let those dry and we'll come back and we'll do the sides. Alright, this is the way they generally hang these clocks. Just a pole, and that's rather thick. You put a screw in a wall, and if that head doesn't get all the way past the edge of the wood on the inside, that screw head can be sitting there on the opening, and a vibration on the wall or pulling on the weights or what have you can cause this to slip off the nail or screw head and fall on the floor. So many of these clocks have fallen on the floor and gotten busted up, this one included. So what I like to do is make a brass plate to go over here with a hole in it so that you have a much thinner opening for the nail head to get through, so even if the clock comes forward, it's going to catch on the edge of the brass and be much less likely to fall off the wall. Much more positive hanging. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to make a little plate for this so that this will be less likely to fall off the wall. Alright, the brass I'm going to use to make the little plate is about 1.5 millimeters thick, 1.4 millimeters. We'll cut it out of this brass and go from there. Layout die. Close enough. Right. So about 1 inch by 1.5 inches or so. We'll cut a hole in here. I'll probably cut that hole first so that I have something else to grip this with in the drill press. Okay, got holes drilled. there it is. Okay, got it on the test stand.